The United Arab Emirates has emerged as a new venue for these critical negotiations. From your perspective, what does the choice of the venue signify?
Talks were significant. I think it's the first time that the two leaders have held direct talks without any mediators. I think the choice of venue in Abu Dhabi is a clear signal both to Russia and the West that they believe that a neutral country, which is neither Russia nor the West, is a good venue for direct negotiations. Well, I mean, it depends which part of the negotiations. If we're looking at the text of the peace treaty, I don't think that needs much outside help. The one issue, which is a more international issue, is about transport and connectivity. It's about the route through Meghri to Nakhchivan. It's about opening borders. And there, for sure, I think Russia has always had its agenda. And I think what we're seeing now is, for the first time, both Armenian and Azerbaijan rejecting the idea of Russian forces in that route in Meghri, which I think is important. No one country would be in control of that route. Certainly not Russia, not America. We'd be looking at an international consortium, maybe European countries.
Beyond the direct parties that are taking part in these negotiations, what other countries do you think have influence on the outcome of the negotiations?
The Americans have woken up to this issue. Marco Rubio is involved. I think the Americans have fairly good relations with both Armenia and Azerbaijan for different reasons. President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been in the region recently in Baku. So I think America is activating its interest. There's some talk of an American-Armenian company being involved. This is not going to be an American deal signed in Washington. This is a broader international involvement. And again, there is no mediator like we saw in the past with the Minsk group. This is direct talks between Baku and Yerevan.
Based on the current situation and historical context of Karabakh conflict, what are your expectations of the outcome of the negotiations?
Well, I mean, we've still got a long way to go. Azerbaijan is still insisting that Armenia change its constitution. I think that won't happen for a long time, until after the next election next year in Armenia. Peace agreement is not the end. It's just the start of a new chapter in which there will be many difficulties and a lot of work to be done. But obviously, a peace agreement is needed before anything concrete can happen between the two countries.
And how do you see, how will the outcome of the negotiations influence the opinions of people in Armenia and in Azerbaijan?
Well, obviously, the first thing that needs to happen is opening of diplomatic relations, so the two sides can talk to each other more formally. Also, with Turkey, opening of diplomatic normalization of relations. Then one would hope that there would be opening of borders, that there would some transport links would begin to reopen, because if there's no tangible economic benefit, then what's the point of a peace treaty? And most importantly, I think we would hope a change in the Azerbaijani language and rhetoric towards Armenia. It's still extremely hostile. We've seen a change in the Armenian language towards Azerbaijan from Prime Minister Pashinyan. We haven't seen that from President Aliyev. President Aliyev has very tight control. There's no opposition now. So he completely controls the media. So he can control the narrative there. I think the question for him is, if he makes peace with Armenia, then he has to change his conversation with the Azerbaijani public. He has to talk about other things. He uses the Armenian question to divert attention from other issues. In Armenia, obviously, this will be a subject in the election. I think the Armenian public will be happy if there is progress, and if Prime Minister Pashinyan can show something before the next election.
The US has played a huge role in this region, and how do you think, how did US approach evolve over time?
I think the trouble is that American administrations tend to see the South Caucasus through the prism of other issues. Often it's Iran, sometimes Russia, sometimes commercial interests. I think Europe, hopefully that can change, but I think the European Union has a more consistent interest in this region because they see the interest in both in Armenia and in Georgia, obviously, of getting closer to Europe. So I think Meghri, so-called Zangezur corridor route, is more important now because people are worried about the direction Georgia is taking. If we had a more pro-Russian government in Georgia, for example, then the traditional route, Azerbaijan-Georgia, is no longer so reliable. Maybe there could be Russian influence there. So I think there's an international interest in having an alternative route that's through Meghri, and an international interest in opening the Armenia-Turkey border.
Is there any relation between these negotiations and the inner political situation in Armenia? I mean, arrests and accusations.
There's an opposition in Armenia, but I think we've seen recently that they can't put large numbers of people on the streets on this issue. We see that the Russians want to disrupt Mr. Pashinyan. They're not happy, to put it mildly, with his government. They would like to see regime change in Armenia. And simultaneously, I think the Russians don't want to see a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which is not a full Russian peace agreement. Because if there's a non-Russian peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, this makes the two countries more autonomous, more independent of Russia.